and welcome to episode 13 of the Lottie and Albert podcast. My name is Lindsey and I am a crochet designer and craft editor from the Cotswolds in the UK. This is my podcast all about crochet and sometimes a little bit of sewing. Very, very warm welcome to anybody who's viewing for the first time, and of course a massive warm welcome to all you returning viewers as well. As I said, I am Lottie and Albert, and I am Lottie and Albert all across the internet. I am most active on Instagram. I am also on Etsy and Ravelry. There is also a Ravelry group for this podcast and for any Lottie and Albert patterns, which you can find by searching Lottie and Albert in the groups tab on Ravelry. So yeah, hello. It's been nearly a month since I filmed the last podcast. Mainly because I've been on holiday. We went on a 2-week holiday to Japan. And I very nearly filmed a podcast when I was out there. But it just didn't happen. So here we are. We're back to normal. And yeah, I hope you forgive me. I have so much to show you though. I normally talk about, if it's your first time watching, I normally talk about finished objects first. Then I talk about new things, new yarn I bought or new crafty bits, and then I talk about whips and generally just sort of waffle in between. But yeah, today I think is going to be a little bit different, mainly just because everything's merged into one. A lot of my whips I started and finished in Japan, or I've got loads of yarn that I bought when I was in Japan. So if the format is slightly different today, possibly even more rambling, then yeah, that's why really. It's just all gotten a bit mixed up. But I will start with what I am wearing. You may have noticed is a crochet garment. I have made a Frank&Olive, don't know how you can see because I'm wearing it, a Frank&Olive box jumper in yarn that I bought when I was in Japan. Very happily, we found a craft fair we went to. It was sold to us by our friends who we were out there visiting with as a sort of food and kind of farmers market equivalent. Yeah, it turned out to be a craft market and food market, which was perfect. So less than 24 hours from being in Japan, I had bought a sweater's quantity of yarn, which was unexpected but very pleasant. I hadn't really planned to. I didn't even really expect there to be any yarn or to go to a craft fair within 24 hours of being in Japan. I had researched a few shops, big sort of craft department stores that I would like to try and get to in the city we were staying in, which was Nagoya. But yeah, I came across a couple of yarn stores. I'll try and put some pictures in of general things we saw in the market. Because it was amazing. They had such beautiful stuff. Amazing jewellery, leather wax, ceramics. I wanted to buy so many plates and bowls with just the cutest decorations on, but I had a bit of a chat with myself and decided they wouldn't travel well, so I didn't end up getting any, but there was some really, really nice stuff. I mean, you go to like craft fairs in the UK, and obviously I love all crafts. I don't discriminate, and so I usually enjoy them, but every now and again there's stuff that's quite, maybe not your taste or a bit more traditional. I like quite modern stuff, but I swear everything at this craft fair was amazing. And I was also introduced to the world of Japanese plastic fake food, which I didn't know about. And there was a stall selling the most amazing hair clips and accessories and phone cases, which all looked like fake food. So like beans on toast and scrambled egg. And I think it essentially stems from the fact that most restaurants in Japan, or certainly the places I went, They have pictures of all the food on their menus, and then in the windows they usually display sort of like 5 to 10 dishes of the kind of food they sell, and they obviously, rather than putting a real dish of food in, they have fake food. So yeah, apparently it's a big thing, the fake plastic Japanese food industry. Who knew? I didn't buy a phone case. I was really tempted, but they were quite expensive, so I didn't buy it. But yeah, I did buy some yarn. This wasn't the first yarn I bought. The first yarn I bought was down here, but it's kind of similar, and it's in a plastic bag, which is really annoying. The prices were not dissimilar from the UK, maybe slightly cheaper than I was expecting. I'm talking specifically yarn-wise here. I came across this store and they had the most unusual yarn. And so I just couldn't resist. And here are some of them here. Know how well you can see. Isn't it amazing? This is called parallel yarn. Now I don't know if anybody else has parallel yarn in their country or if that's just a thing that I've missed, but it's essentially different threads held together. They're not sort of woven or you know, bound or anything, they're just loose, but we've got this like green and a pink and a sparkly silver and this fluffy white thing with bubbles coming out of it. I mean, it's crazy. Like, it looks a little bit like a bird's nest, but it's like the prettiest, jazziest bird's nest ever. And these ones reminded me a little bit of kind of like Christmas decks. So I bought 5 of these. I think these are like 10, maybe 20 gram. They don't say. There's very little information, and my Japanese is very limited, so I bought these. And from the same stall I bought these 3. So like a pink with a kind of neon-y rickrack through it, this which is like multicolored bubbles, and again they're all about the same weight. It doesn't say what weight they are, it doesn't say what hook to use, but I would say that they're kind of a worsted, Aran, about an Aran, maybe verging on chunky, but we will just have to experiment. I couldn't decide. I'll try it again and put a pic in as I'm talking. There are so many beautiful ones. So I got 3 of these and 5 of these. These were my favourites. But yeah, I don't know if I'll have to like maybe stripe them with a solid yarn, or maybe they can be like the cuff of something or the top of a stocking. I've no idea, and I don't even know if I've got enough there to make something with. I should have weighed them, maybe just double check how much was actually there. Really strangely, I only took 2 crochet hooks with me to Japan. A 4mm and a 6mm. I took 2 whips, which was my Lyula and my Atomic Flowers blanket, which both require a 4mm hook. So I don't really know why I ended up with the 6 in there, but I used it and worked up this little swatch. This is just 2 rows of trebles, so it's it's very dense with a 6. So I didn't really try and make anything else while I was out there. I think I need a bigger hook to get it to have any kind of drape or to show off the yarn. But yeah, isn't it fun? Do you have yarn like this near you? Or, I mean, you could almost make it yourself. I just sent to my Fibershare partner loads of sort of old, essentially embroidery type threads from past lives, from a long time ago, because I thought I'm never going to use them anymore. I don't really do embroidery or, you know, any kind of dressmaking. And she said she liked embroidery, so I thought, well, if she can make use of them in some way, then that would be good. And now I'm like, I could have made them into yarn. I should have kept them. But yeah, this is the first yarn I bought. on the first day of my 2-week holiday in Japan. The only thing I know is that it says handmade paralleled yarn on it, and then it says Komakoba. I don't know if you can see on the label. And they all say the same thing. One of my friends, oh, I've just noticed this one's got tiny little sequins in. You probably can't see. Really tiny. One of my friends on Instagram, Trish Lamoose, said very cleverly, check it out on Ravelry, because you never know. Somebody might have listed the same yarn on Ravelry. I do also have a little leaflet that they gave me. Yeah, but again, I thought initially that it was a leaflet for the shop, but I don't think it is. It's a leaflet for the craft fair, or for another craft fair happening at a later date. But it does say Instagram handmade mart 111. So maybe I, or you guys, should check out that Instagram account and see if we can link back to the yarn. But yeah, it was quite like a kind of indie sellers craft fair. So that was the first yarny purchase, and then literally 5 or 6 stalls down was the seller for this yarn. And again, this was called, I think I've thrown away all the ball bands, which is ridiculous, but again, it didn't have any gauge information or any hook size or anything on it. It just said paralleled yarn. Paralleled yarn didn't even really have the name of the company, unless that is the name of the company, but she wasn't the same seller as these little ones, so I feel like that's just referring to the kind of yarn makeup and the fact that it has lots of threads running along. So this is the makeup of the yarn in the jumper that I'm wearing. I don't know how well you can see. So it's got, how many yarns? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sort of threads to it. 2 of which are like fluffy grey. One is a kind of black and white marl with tiny pom-poms on. And one is like a kind of curlier grey. So all together, I mean, how fun is this? That makes up, doesn't have that big loop in it, that's just me mucking it up. That makes up the yarn, and this is what I've got left. So this yarn, the seller for this yarn was selling everything in packs, and they were packs of 8 40-gram balls, okay? And I had no idea when I bought it if it would be enough to make a jumper out of, but again, she had, they had some amazing yarns, and some like not dissimilar from these jazzy numbers, like brighter colours, some really beautiful pinks. I couldn't read a word of what the makeup was, but some of them definitely felt very soft and more cottony, and the prices were higher for the ones which were more like maybe alpaca kind of blends. I don't know, I don't even know what fibre blend this is. And I can't, I mean, I haven't unpacked properly yet. We got back the day before yesterday, and we have all been very jet lagged. Our children have both been waking up at 2 AM UK time, which is a joy, because, you know, if you're an adult and you're jet lagged, you wake up at 2 AM, you have a little bit of a think, and you say to yourself, okay, I'll maybe read for half an hour, go make a hot drink, and I'll try and go back to bed, and maybe you're awake for an hour or two, and then you, no, not when you have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, because they cannot be reasoned with. Lie down, go to sleep, does not work. So they've both been up at 2 AM. It's been quite hectic, haven't fully unpacked. I did keep the label for this because I was going to ask my friend who we were out visiting, who is Japanese, to translate it for me. But yeah, I can't even find the label now, but I'll put in some pics of the stall if I haven't already. And the reason I bought this one was because I knew that there were, what's 8 times 40, whatever that is, that grammage, I knew would be enough to make something big-ish. So I knew I was going to either make like a big cowl or scarf, or I thought maybe I could try and get like a jumper out of it. And so I ended up picking a colour that I thought that I would actually wear. I have talked before on the podcast about how I am really drawn to bright, sparkly colours and amazing things such as this, but I will not wear this in a jumper or a scarf particularly, because I know myself, and although I like, I guess, I don't know, like maybe homewares or fun stuff made out of these colours, unless it's socks, I'm probably yeah, more inclined to wear blues and greys and mustard. And so she didn't have any mustard. And so yeah, I bought this one, which I thought was a little bit more safe, and I'm so pleased I did, because I'll try and show you it better. As I said, it's the Frank&Olive box jumper, so it's supposed to be like an oversized boxy number. It's got a little kind of slit here and large sleeves. You will remember, if you are a long-time viewer of the podcast, that I started making a Frank&Olive box jumper before, and I bought some, I have no idea why I'm out of breath, sorry. I bought some Stylecraft chunky in like a blue colour, and I just got so bored. I couldn't progress it. I mean, the nature of it, it's boxy. It's basically just like a box with sleeves. And so it's just straight rows back and forth. And I think I was whinging about how, yeah, I just found that really boring. Which isn't a criticism of the pattern, it's just a criticism of me, because I am a little bit lazy and lose interest, and it's partly why I really like texture in crochet, and it's partly why I really like variegated yarn, or yarn that's different or changes colour, because it keeps my interest when working on bigger projects. So for me to make a Frank&Olive box jumper out of a solid Stylecraft colour, and it was literally just rows back and forth, back and forth, back and forth of like 70 odd stitches, and I had to make 2 panels the same. Sorry, I've got air in my mouth. Yeah, I couldn't bring myself to work on it. And yeah, I was in Japan, as I said, for 2 weeks, and I finished this before I left. I think just because I enjoyed the yarn so much, same pattern, just different yarn, and it flew off the hook. So I'm wearing a black t-shirt underneath, and I can see this really annoying little gappy bit here. I've either obviously left too big a space when joining the sleeve, or I've like stuck my crochet hook through it and it's been in a ball. So I bought the yarn. I had very little information. I had the Frank&Olive pattern on my phone, and I thought, that's quite a simple pattern. It's not gonna, doesn't have, you know, like stitches that are gonna gobble up loads of yarn. If I'm gonna get any kind of jumper out of this yarn, I thought about trying to make up my own, like just do a cardie or something. But I thought, I'll see if it works. And as I said, I only took 2 crochet hooks with me, a 4mm and a 6mm. I had no idea what weight this yarn was, and I tried it with the 6mm, and it just worked. It was like yarn fate. I think the drape is good. I don't think it's too gappy. Yeah, it was clearly made for a 6mm crochet hook and this pattern. But because I had no idea of the yarns gauge, and the Frank&Olive pattern is quite basic, so that doesn't even tell you, I think in her listing on Etsy where I bought it, it tells you what yarn, how much yarn is required, or what weight yarn is required, or she tells you a specific yarn that she made it out of, and then you can kind of work out from there. but in the pattern itself, it doesn't give you gauge, it doesn't tell you hook size, it doesn't tell you how much yarn you need. So I was kind of working very blind. In the end, I mentioned I had 8 balls of 40 grams. I just essentially swatched up the whole 40 grams with my 6mm hook. I finished the whole ball. I worked it to this width. Counted how many stitches I had gotten out of one 40-gram ball. Counted how many stitches there were in the pattern for the jumper. And then worked out if that was going to be enough. So the original Frank&Olive box jumper, I think, uses a chunky yarn, and this, as I said, is more of I think it's more of an Aran weight, maybe verging on chunky. As you can see, it's not crazy thick, but the bobbles obviously give it maybe a little bit of extra oomph. Yeah, so I essentially did that big swatch, counted the stitches, whacked it out, and then I thought, I'm just going to give it a go and see if I can make a jumper out of it. So even from the very beginning, I was basically playing yarn chicken with my 8x40-gram balls, which I feel some of you are probably shouting at me saying, that's X amount of grams, but yeah, not a maths brain. What I did, because I wasn't sure if I'd have enough yarn, was I worked the pattern slightly differently. So in the pattern, you're supposed to work from the bottom. I just kicked my table, sorry. You're supposed to work from the bottom up, and then I think you do the neck, and then you add the sleeves on. So I worked from the bottom up, but I didn't work as many rows as it said, because I figured that if I had some left over, I could always then add it to the bottom. And I worked the sleeves and worked them slightly shorter than normal. So this probably isn't as big as it should be in terms of I did the same amount of stitches width-wise, I did slightly shorter sleeves, but also I think it's supposed to be worked in a chunky with a 7mm hook, and I've basically worked it in more of an Aran with a 6mm hook. But I'm fairly petite, I'm only like 5'3", and I'm about a UK size 10, so I think I got away with it. I think, you know, it's still obvious that it's meant to be oversized, and I love the yarn. I've still no idea what makeup it is. It definitely smells woolly. It's definitely got some natural fibre in there somewhere. That pom-pom thread, probably not so much. And then it's got kind of like, oh, you probably can't see, like little sort of wispy bits coming off. So yeah, I love it. That's my main finished object. And a bit of a ramble about my first day in Japan and the craft fair. And making a pattern out of yarn which has limited information, and a pattern which is very limited. But yeah, like I said, crochet fate, because I should have taken a hook in every size, really, thinking about it. Don't know why I didn't do that. Well, obviously wasn't organised, or I was just too busy packing for my whole family and not thinking enough about crochet, so sorry guys, but yeah, it worked out pretty well. These sleeves are kind of bulging slightly here, maybe because they should be longer, but I think we'll live with it. I think that, yeah, it was a pretty good holiday project and will always remind me now of Japan, and I feel like the yarn is quite different from anything that I've worked with previously. So all in all, very happy about that one. I do have one more finished object. I actually have two. I made a little hat for our friend's little boy while we were out there. We noticed while we were out there that loads of the Japanese babies were wearing these cute little beanies, which were really simple, just kind of circular, worked in the round, little close-fitted beanies, but with a little, I mean, it sounds ridiculous saying it, but just with a little, like, almost stalk on the top, so as if, like, the first round had been worked in like 3 rounds of just sort of 6 stitches and then worked up into the bigger hat. So I made him one of those as a surprise for a friend while we're out there, but I didn't even take a picture of it. So I'll see if I can get a picture from her and maybe post it on Instagram at a later date or something. But that was just a quick little evening make. He's only 6 months, so it's quite a little hat. And yeah, and my other finished object is my sweetheart socks. Da, da, da. My jazzy rainbow socks, made using Vicky Brown's February sock box club pattern, which is also available for sale on her Etsy as her sweetheart socks. I think I'm saying that right. And the yarn is the main yarn, which is from here to here and then here to here, is Gamer Crafting's Lady Runicorn yarn, which I bought when I was at Yarndale. You may remember if you watched that episode. This I posted about and have talked about before because again, crochet fate, it just happened to work up into a perfect rainbow. So yeah, I had finished one before I went to Japan, and then I actually took this in my carry-on in the hope that my crochet hook won't get taken off me, and in the hope that I might actually get to do some crochet on a 12-hour flight, despite the fact that I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old and a 9-hour time difference and a 12-hour flight. Did I mention it was a 12-hour flight? It was worth it. It was so worth it. But oh yeah, anyone who's done it or anyone who does it on a regular basis, kudos to you. I managed to work the second sock, which is the first sock and which is the second sock now. Oh gosh, who knows? They're both pretty similar. I think this is the second sock. I managed to work from here basically to here on the first part of the flight, which was pleasantly surprising, the first flight on the way out. And then I didn't really touch it while we were in Japan because I was making this, and I made the little hat for our friends. And then the kind of last couple of days, or even maybe the night before we flew, I worked the heel section. And then on the second flight home, I worked this part. So I'm not really sure what's happened with me in socks, but I've made a couple of pairs of crochet socks before, and I've talked about them before. And my first pair took me forever. Granted, they did have much more of a folded ribbing section here, which was worked with sort of 4-ply sock yarn and a 4mm hook. But yeah, they took me forever, whereas these just flew off the hook. I love this rainbow yarn. I'm not entirely happy with the contrast yarn that I used for the heels. If you watched the last episode, you know I talked about it. I had it in my stash, and it was a little 20-gram and 25-gram mini, which I had from my last fibre share partner, I think September last year. And similar to the Gamer Crafting yarn, which I don't know how you can see, it's got like the sparkly stellina stuff in it. It's not really catching in the light, but it's essentially sort of undyed, and then the rainbow section and the base has got a sparkle through it. And this little mini skein I had is also 4-ply sock yarn, and it's rainbow themed obviously, and it also had the sparkly stellina through it, so it seemed like a match made in heaven. But now that they are done, I almost feel like the toe and heel are too jazzy and too busy. Like maybe it would have been nicer if I'd picked out one of these colours and just done like a solid red or a solid pink heel and toe. Because yeah, these are obviously like very primary colours, whereas this has got a lot more tone and hue in it, which is really fun. But then I think because of it, it's a slightly like this yellow especially is a slightly grubbier yellow. I'm probably being really picky and I'm the only one who cares, but yeah, I kind of wanted this like rainbow amazingness that happened to be the main feature, but I feel a little bit like the heel and toe like detract rather than complement. But there we go. Sorry about that. My home phone was ringing, which is strange because we don't give our number to anyone, and yeah, I'm not brainy. It was a missed call. missed call? Missed number? Wrong number. It was a wrong number. I was talking about my socks, and yeah, I am really happy with them. I do love them. I love this yarn from Game of Crafting. I love how it worked up into rainbows. I've got slightly baggy heels. I don't know if I worked the pattern wrong. Very possibly I was, as I said, working on it whilst also trying to juggle 15 other things. Yeah, they're just a bit baggy, but that's okay because I tend to wear my socks as sort of slipper socks, my crochet socks. I wear them as slipper socks around the house. I don't tend to wear them out as much, so these will probably be more winter wearables, padding around the house, or yeah, like bed socks when it's really cold. Talking of which, I've had a little bit of a shock to the system coming back to the UK because, well, yesterday especially, it was 1 degree Celsius in the morning when I went out. Not at 2 a.m. when I woke up, don't know what temperature it was because we did not leave the house, but at about 8 a.m, 9 a.m. when we left the house, 1 degree. Now in Japan, it was probably around 16, 18 the whole time, which was very nice and warm and balmy as far as this English blood is concerned. We were, especially at the start, the first week, we were in basically shorts and t-shirts, and I was almost feeling that I should have bought the suntan lotion because the sun still felt really hot. And our friends did say that it was unseasonably warm for Japan. But yeah, it felt very warm, and in contrast, UK feels very cold. But yeah, actually one upshot of that is I immediately, suddenly, having come home, feel very Christmassy, or at least very seasonal. They had a lot of Christmas stuff coming out in Japan while we were there. Obviously it's only about, 5 weeks to Christmas now? And it just felt weird. Like, I'm sure there are loads of you watching who live in Southern Hemisphere, warmer climates, and so your Christmases are warm anyway. But for me, I've never spent a Christmas away from home, or certainly away from England. And so I'm used to it being cold. Like, it's not necessarily always snowing, don't get me wrong. We're not like Canada or North America in that respect. We don't get like big snowfalls, but it is always very crisp and frosty and cold, certainly towards the middle and end of November. So yeah, to be in Japan where it was like 18 degrees, I was wearing a t-shirt and they had a giant Christmas tree, I was like, this just feels weird. And I am normally somebody who fully embraces Christmas. I don't necessarily need to wait till December. Very happy to get on board the Christmas train in November, but I just didn't feel it. Didn't feel it. My body was like, no, that's wrong. You're just pretending because I'm in a t-shirt. And yeah, as soon as I'm now home and it's very cold, a bit of a shock to the system, I'm like, oh, I need to make my children hats, I need to make them mittens, and I need to start my Christmas makes. So that's quite a nice feeling, but a little bit of shock to the system. These are perfectly timed. I was wearing these. In fact, I wore them on the plane home as soon as I finished it. I have put sock blockers on my Christmas list. I have not put any yarn on my Christmas list because I have so much of it, but I have put sock blockers and I have put a yarn swift on my Christmas list. So after Christmas, you can see my socks more beautifully displayed than this. But there we go. That's my second/third finished object. And a little bit of a ramble about the plane. What else do I have to show you? Oh yeah, I should mention, I have quite small feet. I have size sort of 4 UK feet. I used to be able to also wear 3 sometimes, but since having babies, that's not the case. I am a 4, which I think is a EU size 36. I have quite small hands and feet, and I also like my socks quite short. Like, I don't like them coming up really high, so I made this length slightly shorter than the pattern called for, from the kind of heel to cuff section. And as a result, even though it's crochet, which obviously uses up more yarn than knitting, this was a 100-gram ball, and I've still got all of this left. I got in a bit of a tangle, so I ended up having to separate it out into 2, but this is, yeah, I've still got quite a lot left. So if you have small feet, you can definitely get 2 pairs of socks out of 100 grams. And then awesome. So I might even try and make my daughter some socks, or I don't know. I obviously am not going to get the rainbow unless I work exactly the same width. Exactly the same number of stitches across. Does that make sense? So I'm just going to have to make something that looks a bit more like this, with kind of little stripes of colour occasionally, or maybe some mittens that are the same width. That's not really going to fit my hand. Maybe. It's snug. It's snug for a hand. Anyway, I'm literally just rambling about my yarn now. I've still got quite a lot left. I'm going to make something else, or it's going to look pretty, real pretty, in my stash. So yeah, that's about it for for finished objects. Oh, here's the pattern. I'll just show you quickly. It's really creased because I've been carrying it around for 2 weeks in a bag. This is the pattern. This is what the socks look like when made by Vicky. I almost wonder if I should have worked this section here in this yarn too. That's what Vicky's look like. The Sweetheart socks, and I do actually have the yarn for these too, because I got the February sock box. There we go. So I've showed you my 2 finished objects. I've showed you the yarn that I bought on my first day in Japan, but that is not all the yarn that I bought in Japan. Oh no, I was not content with 8 times 40 grams of this yarn and these jazzy little numbers, because yeah, about 5 or 6 days into our stay, my husband and my father-in-law, who also came with us, had a day playing golf, and myself and my friend Sayuri took the kids to the zoo. We planned to go to the zoo in the morning, and then my friend, who's Japanese, had said that she would help me locate a big craft store which was in the city, which I had read about online prior to going to Nagoya. I've written down the name of the chain. It's Otsukata. You all know my pronunciation of foreign words is terrible. I'll put it below as well. Otsukata. I think it's a chain. I think they have department stores, big stores across Japan, possibly even further afield. I knew there was one in the city we were staying in. I was keen to go. So after we went to the zoo, we negotiated the subway system with 2 buggies and a sling, up and down, that many lifts, a couple of changes, and got to the store and it was closed. It was closed, and granted, I can't read Japanese, but there had been English instructions online, and my Japanese friend had checked it, and she had said that it didn't say that it was going to be closed that day. So I was a little bit gutted. But, you know, we weren't that far into a holiday. We still had quite a lot of time left, so I thought, well, there's a chance that I'll get, be able to come back. And the very next day, in lieu of him playing golf all day, my husband and father-in-law took the kids to Osaka, and I didn't go, and I felt a bit guilty, and I was like, I'm on a 2-week holiday with my kids, I should spend every possible moment with them. Oh my god, I'm so glad I didn't, because I had the whole morning to myself, and I thought, do you know what, I know exactly what tube stop it is, I know exactly what line I need to get. I'm going to navigate this subway system on my own, and I am going to get myself to this craft store. And I don't know, let me tell you, the Japanese subway system is the easiest thing to negotiate, because every single sign has an English translation, and every single train, certainly in Nagoya and Tokyo, Kyoto, and yeah, everywhere I went, I guess the more rural you get, maybe it's not the case, but certainly the big cities, everything has an English translation. And they even announce on the tannoy on the train, and on the screens, they have the Japanese version, and then they have in English. So it's easier than, say, for instance, when I went to Spain and we went on the subway in Spain and I had to work out, you know, obviously the alphabet is the same in Europe as it is in the UK. And so I think that's what I was worried about. I was worried that I wouldn't understand the pronunciation and I would get lost. It was so easy. It was so easy because it was essentially all in my own language and I understood it. And it was really clear. The Japanese are masters of efficiency and systems. They love that stuff, and it almost swore them. I know some people don't like that. Yeah, so it was so easy to find this craft store, Otsukata, and do you know what? It was a blessing in disguise, because the day before, it was the afternoon, everybody was tired and cranky from the zoo, and yeah, taking 3 babies in would have definitely hampered my shopping experience. I had the whole morning to myself. I got to this craft store. It was 5 stories high, and I just can't tell you, it was amazing. Like, my friend who I was staying with doesn't really do crafting, and so she was like, oh, was it good? I was like, you don't understand. It blew my mind. I went in on floor 1, and I will put some videos. If you watch right to the end, I'll put like all the videos in kind of a loop, because I took, I didn't like talk over it because I was embarrassed. I didn't like vlog it, but I did put some, I videos sort of each floor as I went. And like, if you don't like fabric, maybe you won't be as enthused, but like, it was just sensational. They had every kind of fabric you can ever possibly imagine. They obviously had like all their cottons and like poly cottons, and they kind of had heavier weight stuff. On the bottom floor, they had every kind of Disney fabric you could imagine, loads of like branded stuff like Pokemon and Hello Kitty. In the kids department, they had really cute knits. They had pre-quilted cottons, like a whole massive 2 walls of like pre-quilted cotton stuff. They had pre-hemmed stuff. They had deck chair fabric. They had leather. They had pleather. They had this really neat like thin waterproof fabric, which they'd made little kind of kids ponchos out of on the display, but I thought would make really good wash bag sort of fabric as well, or like little apron fabric. But it wasn't like they just had 2 or 3. They had like 15 to 30 different prints and fabrics in everything. You know, they had like a traditional dressmaking fabric, and then like kids dressmaking fabric, like lurex, neons, glitter fabrics, feather fabrics, layered fabrics. They had like men's suit fabrics. They had a whole rack of different stripy knit fabrics, which you could have made yourself 20 different Breton stripe tops out of, and I would have been in heaven. They had like traditional silk kind of kimono fabrics, and then they had like the kind of heavier traditional Japanese fabrics. They had a whole massive, like, I don't know, like 50 to 60 bolts of Liberty cottons. It was insane. Like, I don't know if stores like that exist in the UK. They probably do. There are probably bigger stores. You know, I think it's places like Birmingham, Manchester, maybe. But we have like Hobbycraft in the UK is like a big chain store. they almost cater for loads of different crafts, and each one has a small section. This store in Japan was like mainly fabric, like basically 4 floors of fabric, and I was sort of looking for the yarn. I mean, I was blown away by the fabric and enjoying it, but every floor I went up I was like, and now for the yarn floor, and now for the yarn floor. And it didn't happen. I was like, oh, there's not going to be any yarn. And then on the 5th floor, about a quarter, and they were like big floors, a quarter of it was devoted to yarn. So I was like, I was hoping for a whole floor, but I'll take the quarter. They had, I mean, yeah, just wait to the end and have a look, but they had amazing pom-pom crafts, yarn felting, but obviously it's Japan, so everything is so kawaii and cute and just done to perfection. So if you are ever in Japan and you want a craft fix and there is a Otsukata near you, go, because it will blow your mind. I feel like maybe in America you have stores like that as standard, or like I know people talk about, is it Joann's and Michael's and stuff a lot. I've never been to America, well, I have been to America, but I haven't been to any of those stores, so I don't know what they're like. But the thing about this store as well was everything was really nicely presented. It wasn't like a mess. It wasn't like a bit of a rough and ready, like dive in and scrabble about, and it wasn't. It was like a really enjoyable shopping experience and just like a feast for the eyes. It was just amazing. I feel like I'm going croaky, waxing lyrical about it. Yeah, I spent about 2.5 hours in this store by myself, just sort of like looking around. I bought some fabric, which I'll show you. And I also bought some yarn, which I'll show you. I did feel the pressure slightly to like buy Japanese yarn. I was like, I don't want to buy any yarn that I can buy elsewhere. But then so they had all the Nora yarns, which I know you can get quite a lot of in the UK. And then I got myself in a bit of a tizwaz because I think I was just putting pressure on myself. And so I sort of didn't buy any yarn for ages and just literally was like walking around it, like taking pictures on my phone, walking around. And then I just sort of like panicked and just threw a load of stuff into my basket and then bought it all. Anyway, here's some of the fabric I bought. This is their like packaging. All the bags have the same thing on as well. Even the bags are pretty. And yeah, this is some of the fabric I bought, so I'll open it up and show you. Again, with the fabric, I wanted to, they had like Moda and, you know, ranges that we can get here too, so I wanted to get fabric that felt Japanese. I don't know. This one doesn't particularly. This was like a really like quite cheap poly cotton, but I just loved it. It's pink, pale pink with little gold shiny sort of stars and circles and geometric shapes. So I don't know what I'm going to make out of that. It's quite thin. Probably couldn't, you can kind of see through it. Can you see through it? You probably couldn't really make like a skirt or anything, not least because my daughter refuses to wear skirts and dresses. But yeah, I might make something for her room, or I have no idea. I just bought it because I liked it, which is really bad, isn't it? Because it's just adding to my craft hoarding on my stash. But I think I got a meter. Of that, and it's quite wide too. So that was good. That was a just because I liked it purchase. I did keep telling myself as well, I'm gonna make project bags. So we'll see if that happens. That might even be a bit thin for a project bag, so who knows. This next one is adorable. It's just adorable. They had quite a few different colourways in this one, so it took me a while to choose, but it's nice and bright. It's like a Liberty print, but look what that is every now and again. Pandas! Can you see them? Oh my goodness. I just thought that it was the most adorable thing. It's called Sweets Forest, Project by Cotton, made in Japan. Here's the selvage. Oops. There we go. Isn't it adorable? This was like the end of the roll, the end of the board. I think this is maybe more of a kind of quilting cotton. I don't even know how much I have. It's about just over 1 meter, maybe just under 1 meter. But yeah, basically the kind of Pandas meets Liberty did it for me. And I bought a bright one, and I thought I could make a little either like project bag, or I might make some kind of colour block storage bags for toys and things. But yeah, that one's adorable. And then this next one's pretty cute too. Are you ready? Oh my goodness, it's llamas and giraffes and swans. Like, this is just, is it swans or emus? I just don't know, but look how cute their faces are. Look at them. Look at them. They're so cute. I bought loads of this. I bought 2 meters of this. And I do have something in mind for this. Thank you very much. I have a toy box, which my dad actually made for us when we were little, which I've done at once. I painted it mint green and put a really sweet bunny fabric on the cushions and had it in my daughter's room when she was a baby. It's now in my son's room, but I thought the bunny fabric that's on it is really sweet, but it's quite babyish, so I thought I might update the cushion covers with this. And I'd like to go for a bit of a kind of monochrome theme in his room, so I'm either gonna do that, or maybe like, I don't know if I have enough, but like some kind of teepee or canopy or something for his room. Failing that, maybe just like a duvet cover or something, because it's adorable. He's in like a cot bed. It's still in cot form at the moment, but it turns into like a toddler bed, so I reckon that might be enough fabric. And yeah, that's nearly it for the fabric. I bought this little, it's 30 centimeters by 110, because animal print is life and I love it. And then I also bought this little rustly pack. I think these are fat 8s. I've actually taken one out and given it to my mum. I bought her a pack as well, but I gave it to her last night. These are kind of animal printy as well. The pack that I gave her had a little panda fabric in it as well, and also a fabric with little like, what am I trying to say, macrame terrarium plant hanger print, which was pretty cute. And I gave her the choice and she chose that other one. I did kind of want that macrame plant hanger fabric, but I'm happy with that animal print selection too. So yeah, I have no idea what to make with these project bags, but they're fat 8s, so patchwork project bags. Yeah, that's the fabric I bought. I found that buying the fabric much easier than buying the yarn. Like I said, I slightly panic bought the yarn, but I'll show you what I ended up getting. I found, again, I'll put a photo in at the end. They had a shelf of what they called combination yarn. So they had mulled yarns and solids, and they had grey and mustard and red and navy. Oh my goodness. I almost wish I'd bought the mustard, because I just made that mustard cowl. I was trying to branch out, but look, I haven't really branched out, have I? You can see here in the little picture, the idea is you make, you know, the hat in one and then the contrast band in the solid or similar. These are 40-gram balls. I think it's 100% wool, made in Japan. Combination wool by Daruma. So this is the kind of label. So obviously if you don't read Japanese, if you do read Japanese, you'll know exactly what this says. If you don't, then there's obviously information you can get off there. Like, you can see it says 40 grams, and you can see the hook size is given. Although it says 7 to 15, which is quite a broad range for knitting needles, and then 7 to 8 for crochet hooks, and then those washing symbols are pretty universal, and it says 100% here, and it says hand wash, so I'm going to take from that it's 100% wool. My husband does have that app on his phone where you can hold the camera over and it translates for you, so maybe I'll try that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it says. Yeah. Yeah. Because they're 40 gram, I wasn't sure if I'd get a hat for me, or maybe I'll make one for my son. But yeah, I wasn't sure if I'd get a hat out of one 40 gram and then that. Maybe I would have done, but I bought two and this one. That's my combination wool. I thought that was a bit fun. I hadn't seen that before. So I bought those. I also bought a few little, being very organised, I bought a few little Christmas prezzies. So my dad's partner, she really likes cross stitch, so I thought that she might enjoy this kind of embroidery cross stitch kit. And my mother-in-law really likes beading, so I thought that she might enjoy these as a Christmas present. Like I think essentially you string the beads into a line and then you tie them into a knot. I realised that the instructions would probably be in Japanese, but for both of them, I figured there would be charts, hopefully a diagram, so I reckon that they can work them out. Yeah, I just thought, why not? People will appreciate something a bit different, they will appreciate something a bit different, and they won't complain that it's Japanese instructions. I'm not that mean to my family, I wouldn't really say that. I also bought, because they were on sale, a few other bits and bobs. I got this ski yarn. I believe Ski is a Japanese make. They had quite a few different ranges from Ski, like thicker stuff, thinner stuff, fun stuff. This was on sale. It was only 180 yen. And I just thought it was really fun, colourful. It's actually a kind of, it never really works for me. I need to get myself a fancy camera. It's like variegated, but it's like ombre variegated. So it like changes as it goes along the ball. So that's gonna be really interesting to work up. So there you can see it's always like 3 colours at a time. But obviously like in the ball there's loads of colours. So we'll see what I make with that. I have no idea. It's just a little, I don't even know what grammage this is. 40 grams. They like 40 gram balls in Japan. In the UK they tend to be either like 50 or 100, but 40 grams seems to be the standard. Yeah, and then these were also on sale. I got like 4 balls of this, and then 1 each of these 2 colours, which I'm enjoying. I've no idea why I bought this. I've no idea. This was part of my panic buying. This is Clover Merino, and it feels like a super chunky. I bought like 4 balls of the yellow because I'm going to make my daughter a hat. Now, when I was up at 2 AM yesterday morning, I made a hat. She is 3, nearly 4. This is super chunky, and I don't even know what I've done with the hat, but it looks like a tea cozy on her head. She loves it because it's yellow, but you can't really avoid the fact that it looks like a tea cozy on her head. Let me just go and see if I can try and find it. Okay, I'm back. Here's the hat that I made. So this is crochet. This is a stitch I was trying out after seeing it on the Woolly Wonders YouTube channel. I'll put it in so do I. And it's all using slip stitch. So this is slip stitch. This is what slip stitch looks like. Worked in rows. Working alternate front loop and back loop rows. I really like it. It's kind of like a sort of pearl knit effect. And this is what it looks like on the other side. But yeah, this this is a little bit of a failure because, I don't know, maybe if it was slightly longer, look, it basically fits me. If it had a brim, maybe it would look better, but I've basically made a tea cozy, and my daughter is 3, she's only got a little head, like I can't send her out in this. I was like, it's such a quick make, I love it, I love the stitch. It has not worked as a hat, has it? Let's be honest with ourselves. So, I don't know, I might like unpick this section and try and turn it into a little scarf for her. I wonder if that, because that is like 2 balls, a ball and a bit. So it's quite yarn hungry, the slip, I done to my hair, sorry. It's quite yarn hungry, the slip stitch. And I used a 15mm hook because with slip stitch, unless you work it loosely, it's not going to work. So I quite like it. It's quite stretchy, like as a fabric. I feel like maybe a really chunky jumper would look pretty cool, but a hat for a 3-year-old, this is not. It has not worked. I need to make her something a little bit finer and more refined, and that looks less like I've sent my daughter out with a tea cozy on her head. Does anybody know the program Tree Fu Tom, which is on CBeebies? For some reason this reminds me of like some of the characters and the hats they wear, which are basically like acorns on their heads. It's the kind of what I've achieved here. Anyway, it's a bit of a failure, but yarn wise it's really nice. This is almost like a kind of powder blue grey colour, which I really like with this pinky colour. So yeah, this is Clover, and when I bought it I was a bit like, oh, I've annoyed myself. I wanted to get like Japanese yarns that you can't get in the UK. My mum, when I showed my mum yesterday, she was like, Lindsey, Clover is a Japanese make. But yeah, Clover make a lot of the sort of patchwork and quilting equipment that my mum sells, and yeah, she said it comes from Japan. So I have bought Japanese yarn. It's just a recognisable name. And again, these are 70 gram balls, 35 meters, made in Japan, 100% something. Well, actually it says it's merino, doesn't it? They're not like overly soft, but they are squishy and nice. So yeah, they were part of my panic buying, and that's pretty much it. Oh, I bought these cute little stitch markers which are heart shaped, and I always thought that I wasn't filming then. Yeah, I bought some knitting needles. Like, I don't even knit, and when I got them back and I was working, I realised I'd bought like a really long circular needle thing. I can't make a hat on these. These are, like I said, I panicked. I was like, I bought chunky yarn. I might try knitting. No, because this is for what? What is this even for? Someone tell me, like a blanket? Yeah, it's not for a hat, is it? You can't make a hat when your joiny thingy is that long. Maybe one day I will knit and I can use these. I also bought a 10mm hook and a 15mm hook, which weren't cheap, and I do have at home, but I was like, but I need to work with this yarn while I'm in Japan. But it was enjoyable. I'm not complaining. I had 2.5 hours in the craft shop. It was amazing. I took so many pictures, so much inspiration for work as well. I was like, that could be a project from Molly Makes. That could be a project from Molly Makes. That's an amazing fabric. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed my morning. And then after the very easily negotiated subway system, I went back to Nagoya railway station because I had read on a blog somebody who had been fabric and craft shopping in Japan, who helpfully wrote it up in their blog, that she had bought some books from the station. Now, I can read crochet charts, and I know that most sort of Japanese books, crochet books, include charts. So despite the fact that I can't read Japanese, I thought, okay, I'm going to go find this bookstore, I'm going to check it out, and I'm going to find some crochet books and see if any of them are interesting or need to come home with me, because obviously I hadn't bought enough at this point in time. So I went to the station, and it took me a while to find the bookstore because I wasn't reading the floor plan correctly, and I thought it was saying that the bookstore was at the back of one of the floors. Now, again, I live in quite a small town, essentially in the countryside in England. And obviously, I go to cities. I work in Bristol now. I've been to London. But Japan is something else. So in the station at Nagoya, they had 2 giant towers full of shops. I finally located the bookstore when I realised I'd been reading the floor plan wrong. I thought that it was like at the back of a floor. It wasn't. It was the entire 8th floor of what was essentially a shopping mall on top of the station. Like, it blew my mind, Japan. I absolutely loved it. I obviously did so much. I'm trying to like rein it in and only talk about the craft highlights, but it was amazing. We went to karaoke one night and got really drunk. Oh my goodness. Yeah, tick. Japanese karaoke room. Anyway, I found this book shop and then very quickly realised it was the entire top floor, entire 8th floor of this big shopping mall, and it was a massive bookstore. And I started looking around. It was really interesting. I could not find the craft books, and I saw there was like a little help desk, and so I went over and sort of said, crochet, crafts? She had no idea. I had no idea. Should have looked it up in Japanese, but I had my bag of shopping, so basically just pulled out the ball of wool and mimed knitting, and she was like, ah, and took me straight to the craft books, so that worked. And I did buy some books. This is what I bought. An amazing book of sock patterns. Again, can't have a clue what it says, but there are charts. These are all crochet socks made from patterns in the book. How exciting is this? Actually, can you see these ones? And how they've got the toe separate? That's a really popular style in Japan, and I think it's influenced by the traditional Japanese dress and the kimonos, where they wear basically their flip-flop type footwear, and they have like the big toe separated by the bar in the flip-flop. So yeah, you can buy a lot of socks where the big toe is separate. I'm not sure if it's like a serious thing or if it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, like, I don't know. Colour work socks. This texture had me. I basically bought it just for that. Different colour block socks. Some lacy numbers, they look cute, and also the photography and styling in this book is really nice too. Ooh, look at these. My only issue, I've just seen the postman going to next door, so they might turn up soon. That'll be exciting. My only issue is that obviously I can read the charts, but I'm not going to know what yarn weight it calls for. So maybe I'll have to get myself that little app or take photos and send them to my friend and ask her to help me. Look how sweet these are. So this is fully fueling my crochet sock obsession. I'm so excited for this, but I'll show you. I think I might be being slightly ambitious. This is not a 2 AM when you're tired project. It's got all kind of stitch descriptions here. So obviously I can't understand what it says, but it's pretty visual. Ooh, sorry about that. It's pretty visual. Oh my goodness, I'm in like a right mess and I'm slightly embarrassed that the postman's gonna come. But yeah, this is the chart. section. So this is what it looks like. I think most of them are worked flat and then joined. So they've got like measurements here. So I think you work out what pattern you want, you work out your own measurements, and then you work a flat section for most of the patterns and then seam it. So that's a little different to most of the socks that I've made so far, which I'm pretty much all, no, they are all Vicky Brown's patterns, which are all worked in the round, except for maybe sometimes the heel is worked in rows and then you work around it. But yeah, am I doing too ambitious? Is this for anybody else with dread? I think it's exciting. I think that, you know, with all the spare time I have, I can spend hours just sitting down and working it out. But it's pretty visual, so I'm gonna give it a go. And get myself a Google Translate app. But yeah, so I bought this one. It's called Select Collection Aran Lace Colourful Simple, and it's in a Shy original, printed in Japan. Apple Mints, is that the right way out? No, I think that is maybe the publisher, or maybe a Shy original is the publisher. Who knows? Who even knows? This is strange. It's like a paperback with a case. Right, and then the second one, Wonder Crochet. Is that even what it's called? I've just made that up. No, it is. I was like, how have I gotten that word? Like, have I read Japanese, not realising? That's it here. That's Wonder Crochet. Wonder Crochet. And can you see why I bought this one? Texture, 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 texture. Oh, we love the texture and the geo. This is not dissimilar. They have projects ranging from blankets and little purses to shawls and bags, hats. Love that. Love a bit of texture. And yeah, then just kind of swatches, and this is, what's this called? Overlay crochet? Oh, that's actually waffle stitch. Yeah, so I don't necessarily, although those are nice, didn't necessarily buy it for the specific project so much as like the kind of stitch information. I mean, I know how to do this stitch. I know how to do some of these stitches already, and I realised that I could get them in English books and probably understand them easier, but oh, I don't know. I was in a spending mood, clearly. I'd already spent a lot at the craft store, and yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to buy the Japanese craft books, okay? I mean, this is going to be so easy to understand. Wonder Crochet and the sock book. I'm probably more excited about the sock book. Somebody's going to leave a comment now and tell me that you can get a really similar book in the UK and that would be easier, but we like a challenge. We like a challenge. That's nearly it. I have one more ball to show you. Now, this has got a little bit of a story. I'll try and keep it short. I'd obviously bought this pack of yarn, and the price that I paid was for the 8 balls altogether, and the whole stall selling these yarns, the price was for the whole ball altogether. So later on, towards the end of our stay, we were out and about, and my friend took me into a department store which she knew had like a craft section, like quite small comparatively to the 5-floor Wonder that was the Atsukata or whatever it's called, but she took me in, and now we had the kids with us. My father-in-law had taken my daughter on like a big Ferris wheel type thing, and I had forgotten to get the sling or the backpack carrier off him, so I was carrying Charlie, who, as I mentioned, is nearly 2. He was very sleepy. We went into the store. It was very hot because I obviously Oh, I've got an alert. I obviously hadn't acclimatised properly. All the Japanese people were wearing big coats and jumpers. I was wearing a t-shirt because it's 18 degrees and that to me is warm. We went in the store. I was very hot. My son was very tired. We had to go to the loo. It was just one of those. And I saw a yarn, which I loved. And there was a price attached. And it also said 20% off. And the yarn was in a bag of 3. This is the yarn. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty good price for 3. It was around £12, okay? I got to the till after going to the loo and changing my son and him being really tired and not wanting to be put down and being very hot and him being very heavy. And it turned out that the price was not per pack, it was per skein, right? So at this point in time, I probably should have said, do you know what? I've already spent a lot of money on yarn on this trip. I'm already making a jumper. I've already got a hell of a lot of yarn at home. I probably don't need to spend £12 to £14 or whatever it was per ball, right? But I felt panicked and there was a queue, and so she was like, the price came up and I was like, whoa, that's a lot more than I was expecting. So I was like, I'll just have one. So that's what happened. I've ended up with one ball of quite, for me, I don't normally spend that much on one ball, quite pricey yarn. I mean, it's amazing, it's gorgeous, I love it. I love it, which is obviously why I picked it up. But, do you know when you get that like slight kind of guilt? I had that guilt for buying this because I don't need it. I've got so much other yarn and fabric and not much spare time to make stuff. So, like, I love it, but I wish it hadn't cost me quite as much as it did. Never mind. This is the label. Hamanaka Parquet, Alsace, Moscow. It says, this is a colourful roving yarn representing the memories of colour in the journey from Alsace to Moscow. And it says, Hamanaka Company Limited since 1950, high quality yarn. Well, that it definitely does. This looks like a little train ticket, I guess, which is quite cute. It's 100 grams, it's 100% something, and it says wash at 30. 8mm hook. It's definitely in the chunky camp, and it's made in Japan. There is a little QR scanny thing there. I guess I could scan that and see. But yeah, anybody know what that says? Nope. This is a little swatch of it knitted. But yeah, maybe I'll make myself a hat, or some mittens might be quite nice. But then are mittens in 100% wool a bad idea because they're gonna get wet and aren't very washable? I just don't know. But it does go colour wise. Look at this. Go quite nicely. What a nice palette. It's a different weight, obviously. You can see these are much thicker. But yeah, that pretty much concludes my Japanese yarn haul. We had the most amazing time. We went to Disneyland in Tokyo right at the end, which I mentioned on my I'm obviously not getting a visit from the postman today, which is good. I mentioned on my Instagram, and like, it was amazing, but it was also very overwhelming. It was heaving. When we first got there, we got there quite early in the morning because my husband's family are not ones for dilly-dallying. They like to be up and out. We got there early. We just walked onto rides and I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna love this. They had parades like every hour or so, and my daughter, who's 3, was so excited. And then after about an hour or so of being there, I started getting a headache, which turned into like a full-blown headache. I probably didn't drink enough water. I was probably dehydrated. It was really hot. The sun was beating down on us. Oh, there's a robin in the tree. Everybody was in like winter coats. We were in t-shirts. I felt like I was getting sunburn. it was like full on Disney Christmas parade, in your face, in your face, in your face. And there were more shops and places to eat than there were rides, which I've been to Disneyland Paris and, you know, like theme parks and things. And I don't remember that being the case there. I don't know. Have any of you been to Disneyland Florida or Disneyland Paris more recently than me? Because I haven't been for a good 15 years. So maybe I'm just remembering it differently. But yeah, there weren't as many rides, and it was more geared towards children, I felt. There weren't as many roller coasters as there were at like Disneyland Paris, which is fine, except for the fact that most of the people there were adults, or at least teenagers. And also the Japanese like teenagers and young adults who were there did this thing which was really cute, but also started to hurt my head after a while, which is, and again, I don't know if this happens in other countries. I'm almost certain it doesn't happen in the UK because, I mean, it's very cute. But they dress identically, like intentionally. So say like I'm wearing today jeans and a grey top. There were groups, particularly the girls, but there were also couples that did it as well, who were like properly twinning. Like they were wearing exactly the same outfits to denote their groups. I think the most I saw, there were 6 girls who had chosen the theme of cream and ankle boots, and they were all wearing cream fluffy cardigans and like cream ankle boots. And I was like, and also I don't know if it's like a British thing or if it's like my family thing, but certainly our family and my husband's family, you go to things like that, you don't buy the merchandise because you've got your packed lunch and you're doing it on the cheap. And maybe, you know, you've put your little girl in a princess dress, but you're not going to buy a princess dress and a princess hat and a princess bag. Whereas Disneyland Tokyo, I swear to you, 9 out of 10 people were wearing the headgear. And because it's Japan, it wasn't just the mini ears. It was like full-on fluffy Olaf hats, like full-on Donald Duck hats with big beaks out the front. And like, it was amazing. But I almost felt like Tokyo Disneyland was more of a cultural shock for me than like any other part of my holiday to Japan, which is bizarre, isn't it? Because I'm obviously very familiar with Disney and the imagery and the characters and everything, but yeah, I felt like Tokyo Disneyland, people were approaching the experience in a very different way. And when we left as well, people were coming away with giant bags of like shopping and merchandise that they had bought. And like, we did go into one of the shops, but it was like, I mean, tat is the wrong word because it wasn't tat, but it was, you know, it was like, surely, I don't know. Maybe I'm just really stingy and boring and I should buy my kids more stuff, but it was just stuff, you know, it was stuff. And I couldn't understand why people were buying quite so much of it, because surely you can get it other places or online, or I don't know. Anyway, Tokyo Disneyland was overwhelming, and by about lunchtime, even the toddler rides had like 45-minute waits. I feel like if we went back, I reckon my kids are quite young really for it, like at nearly 2 and nearly 4. Although my little girl was excited, she would probably have waited for 40 minutes for 1 or 2 rides. And you know, we did take them on rides and we did wait for some of them, but my little boy, he's not yet 2. He just wants to run around and he doesn't want to stand in a queue to then go on a 10-minute ride. The only success we did have was they had a fast pass system, so you were able to go, oh, my phone is dying. You were able to go and get tickets, and it gave you a designated time to go back. And we just happened to be passing Space Mountain, and they had the fast pass offer on for a few hours time. So my husband and I went and got Space Mountain tickets. And that worked really well. So Space Mountain is one of the big like roller coaster rides, if you don't know. And we went back at our allotted time, and my headache was in quite full swing by this time. But I thought maybe I'll enjoy a roller coaster and I'll feel like I've got something out of this experience that's for me, because everything else was very visually overwhelming. And we went straight on the ride. It was amazing. The fast pass worked really well. So with that kind of knowledge of hindsight, we should have done that possibly for a few more rides too as soon as we got there. Anyway, and Space Mountain was amazing. I thought it was going to be really tame when we first got on, but it was amazing. It was so scary. It's all in the dark and there's like lights coming out of you, and just by fluke my husband and I, obviously we didn't take the kids on, they were left with father-in-law, ended up with the front 2 seats. That was really good. So yeah, that was our kind of like one of our last days. We went to Tokyo Disneyland. What I would recommend it if you're there, if you ever get the chance to go. When you get there, decide which rides you want to go on. Go and get fast pass tickets for them as soon as you can, and then go back at your allotted time. I wished we'd sat and watched a parade. My husband and father-in-law weren't that keen, but that's where all the princesses were, and that's really what my little girl wanted to see, was the princesses. So we obviously did catch some of the parades, but they were kind of passing us by. I also bought some pom-poms. They had like 100 yen stores, which works out about 70p. I guess it's like pound stores, or do you have dollar stores in America? I don't know how that works. But yeah, these are hairbands, but I thought that they might make nice pom-poms on hats. I particularly like this colour. So yeah, they were only about 70p. They're quite satisfying to play with. What else do I have to tell you? I think that's about it. I'm really worried that my battery's gonna die. I'll quickly tell you. My tea and yarn club for this month came. In fact, it came when I was on holiday and I'd nearly run out of time in the post office. I went and got it yesterday. It's coconut and chocolate themed. This is the tea and yarn club that I'm signed up to by Oh for Hook's Sake. Coconut and chocolate tea, which I haven't tried yet, which sounds really interesting. I might go and make myself a cup of that now before I edit the podcast. And this yarn, which is merino sock yarn, is dyed to match the colours of a bounty. Isn't that amazing? Whip-wise, now I'm back and I'm feeling Christmassy. I'm starting on Christmas makes, and I'm also making new hats and mittens for my kids. I won't show you everything because I feel like I've whittled on for long enough now, but as I said, I do post a lot on Instagram, so if you want to keep up to date in the next 2 weeks with what I'm working on, then that's the best place to check out. If you have enjoyed the video today, I know it's been a long rambly one, but I would love it if you could give me a thumbs up or subscribe if you haven't already, because that really helps me, you know, sort of get the podcast out there and reach new people who might also like to hear me ramble about Japanese yarn and fabric and how much I love Oh for Hook's Sake. Thanks, Becky. This is a really cute little charm she made as well. Can you see? It's like a little tea progress keeper stitch marker. That's what I'm trying to say. So there we go. I hope you have enjoyed today's episode. I am now back in my regular 2-weekly filming slot. So yeah, as I said, check in with me in 2 weeks' time to see how everything is progressing, and we will be even closer to Christmas. Thank you so much for watching. It's really nice to catch up with you all again, and yeah, I'll see you soon. Please feel free to leave comments. I love reading your comments. I'd love to know what you think. Have any of you been to Tokyo Disneyland? Did you feel overwhelmed? Let's discuss it and help each other get over that traumatic experience. Thank you so much. I will see you all in 2 weeks' time. Bye-bye. こ